Hi, I'm Dean. Today I'm going to read you an introduction from a book called Buddhism, Plain and Simple. It's written by Steve Hagen. I think it's published 97. So I don't know how long this will take, maybe just a few minutes. The reason I want to read this out is because it starts talking about what Buddhism is and spiritual teachings versus religious teachings. That's basically the point that I wanted to make today. And I thought that this introduction kind of summarized that pretty well. So I'll get to it. I'll pop my goggles on. There we go. So we've got the introduction. As the current millennium comes to a close, most of us have lost faith in our ancient storybook versions of the world. With the development of science, many of us have come to see the universe as an inconceivably strange, vast, complex, impersonal, multi-dimensional, and perhaps meaningless realm of mind and matter. We may feel forced to deal with this loss of faith by going to one of two wretched extremes. Either we blind ourselves to our predicament and attempt to escape via drugs or alcohol or our careers or any belief systems, or we face the woeful prospect that we're intelligent creatures living in a meaningless world. Many of us act as though we could find fulfillment if only we possessed enough money, enough security, enough respect, enough love, enough faith, enough education, enough power, enough peace, enough knowledge, enough something. There are others among us, however, who don't buy into this. They sense that real security is impossible to attain, for they know that even if we could manage to accumulate all we desire, it would be inevitably taken from us by death. Our mortality looms above us, as terrifying as it is certain. We seem utterly stumped. How can we possibly find peace under these conditions? Not only do we feel imprisoned by our ignorance, we seem doomed to remain that way. As Yang Chu, the 4th century Chinese philosopher, put it, we move through the world in a narrow grove, preoccupied with the petty things we see and hear, brooding over our prejudices, passing by the joys of life, without even knowing that we have missed anything. Never for a moment do we taste the heady wine of freedom. We are as truly imprisoned as if we lay at the bottom of a dungeon heaped with chains. What is the basic human problem that no apparent remedy will cure? What is our existence all about? How can we ever possibly comprehend the whole of it? And yet isn't knowledge of the whole, knowledge that's not relative or dependent on changing conditions, precisely what would be required to free us from the doubts and dilemmas that cause us so much pain and anxiety? We long to be free from our confusion and discontent, not to have to live out our lives chained helplessly to uncertainty and fear. Yet we often do not realize that it's precisely our confused state of mind that binds us. There is a way to move beyond this ignorance, pessimism, and confusion, and to experience, rather than to comprehend, reality as a whole. The experience is not based on any conception or belief. It is a direct perception itself. It's seeing before signs appear, before ideas sprout, before falling into thought. It's called enlightenment. It's nothing more or less than seeing things as they are, rather than as we wish or believe them to be. This is liberation of mind. This direct awareness of reality as a whole is fully accessible to anyone willing to attend to their actual experience. 2,500 years ago in India, a man named Gautama experienced this liberation. He devoted the remainder of his life to teaching others how to experience the same freedom of mind. After he awakened from the crippling ignorance that kept him from knowing what was actually going on, he became known as the Buddha, the awakened one. The awakened one. A lot of people going around Facebook saying, wake up, wake up, wake up, sheeple, wake up, and not actually really knowing what waking up is. That wasn't in the book, by the way. When the Buddha was asked to sum up his teaching in a single word, he said, awareness. This is a book about awareness. Not awareness of something in particular, but awareness itself, being awake, alert, in touch with what is actually happening. It's about examining and exploring the most basic questions of life. It's about relying on the immediate experience of this present moment. It's not about belief, doctrine, formula, or tradition. It's about freedom of mind. The Buddha learned to see directly into the nature of experience. As a result of his teaching and his life, a new religion arose and spread throughout the world. In the process, like all religions, Buddhism accumulated and generated a variety of beliefs, rituals, ceremonies, and practices. As it spread from country to country, it acquired a wide variety of cultural trappings, special clothes and hats, statues, incense, gongs, bells, whistles, and peculiar architectural forms, icons, and symbols. This book leaves all that behind. Rituals, ceremonies, prayers, and special outfits are inevitable, but they cannot express the heart of what the Buddha taught. In fact, all too often, such things get in the way. The veil of the simple wisdom of the Buddha's words, they veil the simple wisdom of the Buddha's words and distract us from it. This is a major problem. And not just for those of us raised in the West. It is not easy to know where Buddhism ends and Asian culture begins, or to distinguish the original and authentic teachings of the Buddha from what was added later by people with less acute insight. As a result, many Americans and Europeans genuinely believe that Buddhism is about worshipping Buddha, or bowing and wearing robes, or working oneself into a trance, or coming up with answers to bewildering riddles, or past and future incarnations. Buddhism is not about these beliefs and practices. The observations and insights of the Buddha are plain, practical, and eminently down to earth. They deal exclusively with here and now, not with theory, speculation, or belief in some far-off time and place. Because these teachings remain focused on this moment, even as you read this, they remain relevant and of profound value to every culture and every person who investigates them seriously. It is to these uncluttered, original insights and observations that this book returns. This book is divided into 3 parts. In part 1, we'll focus on the primary teachings of the Buddha, which he called the 4 truths of existence. In part 2, we'll focus in greater detail on the 4th of these 4 truths. Here the Buddha lays out a path, a practical and effective way of life by which way we can understand and deal with the world as we find it. And in part 3, we'll look more closely still to magnify the first 2 aspects of this path. The 2 aspects comprise of the wisdom teachings of the Buddha, those that deal with human intent and awareness. For people investigating Buddhism for the first time, Buddhism, plain and simple, offers a clear, straightforward look at the wisdom and guidance of an enlightened teacher who lived some 2,500 years ago, but whose teachings remain as vital and penetrating today as ever. For people already familiar with Buddhism, including long-time practitioners, this book provides a long-needed overview of Buddhism essentials, free of the fetters and cultural trappings that have accumulated over 25 centuries. For every person with the desire to see deeply into the nature of existence, it is a call to awakening. That's the introduction. So it starts going off into the journey into the now, and part 1. So I highly recommend this book. It's actually a real short book. It's only just over 100 pages, 150 pages. It's no big deal. I'll put a link to Amazon or something in the description there. It is a nice book. It just gets straight to the point of what being in the now is and why, and what types of things are causing our suffering, and ways to understand this. I may read other bits out of it at a later date, but this book's actually been very, very helpful in my own development and understanding. Not that I'm all the way there yet or anything. Thanks for listening. I'll see you guys next video.